What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheen, joined as always by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how's it going, man?
It's going well, man. Things are swell, heating up out here in the streets and in the content mines. Good time.
Speaking of heating up, I've been following the people following F1 on Twitter, and so I just wanted to check in with you because I think there was a race this weekend. I think I saw that Red Bull got the top two spots, followed by Mercedes in the 3-4.
That's correct. Yes.
Fill me in. How's the season going?
Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku street circuit. Yeah, Red Bull 1-2, clearly the best team this week. Most disappointingly, Ferrari, both of their runners DNF'd due to car failures, which is unacceptable for the team that's trying to challenge Red Bull for the championship, and at one point was leading both championships before they completely squandered everything away due to strategic errors and issues such as last week. So very disappointing to see Red Bull in such a dominant form. But the season's not over yet. There's still 18 races left, 17 races left. It's like we're like a third of the way in, not even. So
Crazy.
been good so far, though. But yeah, Ferrari just doing what they do historically, which is fumble the fucking bag constantly and just not win when they have a really good chance to.
Well, I'm excited to watch Drive to Survive in like a year about this. So looking forward to that. Appreciate the update, though. I do like following it, mostly just to see like people being like, "What a fucking disgrace Ferrari is." It was really funny seeing people blast them on Twitter this week. We're going to be talking about an album, some TV shows, and a movie today. We're going to start with some news first. So hit that subscribe button if you're listening on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, or you can go to either one of our Twitters or all three of our Twitters at the pod Twitter at nostalgiapod, Dave's Twitter at Martin Swagger, or mine, Sheeny World Peace. And we have our link tree in there to listen to the podcast on whatever platform you prefer to, so check that out. But Dave, we're going to start with a news story that kind of dropped, a speculative news story, I guess I'll say, that was proposing that Netflix may be interested in buying Roku. It seems like reports since this initial one came out seems like it's probably not going to happen. But what would be the appeal to Netflix to purchase a company like Roku?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So this came up, as you said, about almost a week ago when Roku themselves prevented or closed the trading window for staff to sell vested shares, prompting a stock price jump and all this speculation. And I think the reason people jump to Netflix is because there are a lot of reasons it makes sense. And this is not like an out of the blue, out of nowhere, brand new idea. This has been thrown out there before. And I think what's really interesting is you have to really think about what kind of business Roku is. We don't talk about Roku because like we usually focus on what these companies make originally, and Roku does that, but at a very small scale. But Roku is so much bigger than just being a middleman for streaming as the dominant set top box on the market, and against all odds, they seem to be the dominant option despite Amazon and Apple and Google being their main competitors. But that is the case. They're the dominant smart TV OS as well, but their business is based on services. That's where they make all their money. They make like twice as much money on their services and their ad revenue as they do from their actual hardware sales. So they're not just a company that sells you something in Best Buy, And I think the reason it makes sense, is interesting for Netflix anyway, is Netflix recently announced that they're going to go into the ad game for the first time.
Right.
Something that was so against what Netflix has been about this whole time, obviously prompted by their first quarter of stagnant growth ever, and the stock price absolutely tanking recently, right? And doing ads at scale is not something that you can just like start doing successfully. So I think one of the biggest appeals of them perhaps buying Roku is that they could really like get into the ad game in a major way by just kind of acquiring an advertising operation.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think about, right? Because a Wells Fargo report came out that said that it would be cheaper if they did this, but it would still be pretty expensive to basically build out everything you would need to work ads into these platforms. And so I think it identified they would be like at least 14% of the operating budget of Netflix to be building in all of this, all the
Mm.
necessary things for advertisement and sustaining it. So it's a big undertaking either way. So I get the appeal to Netflix of going for it. Yeah, I was surprised to see this report initially. I guess I just had never thought about it, and the more you dig into it, the more you see, as you kind of laid out, that Roku is just massive.
Mm.
It's one of those things where it's like almost like so ingrained, I think, into just like how we think about streaming that you don't actually think about how big it is. It was projected that in order to buy Roku, it would take probably around $17 billion, which I was just kind of blown away by. I didn't even realize that Roku was
Mm.
that big, and it goes back to what you talked about, the ad base and where they get the ads from. They run ads in so many different ways. They get it from so many different sources on so many different platforms that
Mm.
they just are massive. And it was pretty staggering. It, like I said, it seems like it's dead, but do you think there might be like some fire here where there's been just a tiny bit of smoke?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because even though it's expensive, Roku's a multi-billion-dollar company, as you said. It's not as expensive as it was like a year ago when I think it was Comcast was sniffing around because
Mhm.
Roku's tank has also incredible dropped tremendously. So I think their evaluation is now around 13 billion. So what you said, them going over the top of that for that acquisition makes sense. Uh, but I mean, just to speak to their true size, there's like 60 million active Roku users, and it's like at the end of the day, they are a middleman, but they're such a dominant middleman that they can dominate ads. And specifically, they have 10% of Peacock's ad inventory, meaning that the ads that Peacock puts on all their stuff on their ad tiers, 10% of those ads, the money goes to Roku.
That's crazy.
And Peacock, NBC Universal, they had to play ball to that degree to get Roku to put them on Peacock on their service on Roku. So that just speaks to like how a strong position I think they're really in. And even if Amazon Fire TV is doing pretty well, like if Netflix picked up Roku, they would get this huge ad operation. They'd also get a lot of data. I think that's another interesting thing is would the other streaming services be super happy about Roku being owned by Netflix? The other side though, they probably wouldn't have much of a choice. They're not going to pull themselves off just like no streaming service pulled themselves off of Apple TVs or Amazon Fires before. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think the big hindrance, right, would be if Netflix acquired Roku. What happens with all these partnerships where there's Amazon Prime and HBO and Apple TV, like you laid out, that are on these streaming platforms. Now they're supporting a platform that is providing to their competitors. It seems a bit messy, I guess, and I don't know I don't know how that would work out necessarily. So I think that would probably be the biggest hindrance to me, but I would be very interested to see how this plays out. I don't think this is the last we'll hear of it. I think Netflix is going to continue to explore ways to build out their company, obviously, and try to get some more juice behind them as they've had this big fall in stock price. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it. Do you have any last thoughts on the matter, though?
Yeah, one other piece would be this would be the first time that Netflix would have like a secondary business model
Mm.
of any real substance, which would be, of course, the Roku hardware being sold in stores and online. Uh, it's not as strong as Roku's ads, of course, but that would actually still be like a secondary income stream, which would be like the first time Netflix ever had one of those. Because again, they haven't had interest to this point. So, yeah, like you said, definitely a
Yeah.
story that I'm sure will get talked about more moving forward, and I'm sure Roku in general acquisition will probably be a topic that will continue.
All right. Well, we're gonna stay tuned as we hear more about this as it comes along. But let's move forward to a new album that just dropped. Horsegirl, versions of modern performance. Horsegirl, a relatively new band, forming 2019, really breaking through over the last couple of years with a couple of EPs, and this initial album I thought was a really impressive first album for this band, an all female band. I think a lot of uh, I think we've been talking a lot about indie rock female led groups
Mhm.
and female singers and songwriters, and so there's a tendency sometimes when these sorts of groups come about to kind of feel like, another female led indie group. Did Horsegirl break through from that pack
Hmm.
for you in any way?
Yeah, that's a great question because, as you said, women run indie rock. It's just a fact. And Horse Girl, this is their first release debut album on Matador Records, a record label that is home to many of the largest female faces in modern day indie rock. So it makes sense that that's where your mind goes. But yeah, I think they're interesting because their influences are evident, but they're much more in the past, and
Mhm.
I think different than a lot of the other female faces we talk about in indie rock these days. This trio though, Nora Chang, Penelope Lovestein, and Gigi Reese, they're super young. They're all 18 or 19. They're
Mhm.
all college freshmen slash I think well one of them's a high school senior. Like they're very young, but they're super into like 80s and 90s indie and punk and
Yeah.
stuff, and it's pretty cool to see a new act like such as this because again like that the EP from 2020 was only 3 songs, so they haven't put out a lot of music yet because they're so young. But it's so cool to see such obvious and loving homage to some stuff of the past. I think a lot of the reviews have talked about Pavement as an obvious
Yeah.
influence, and the band themselves have talked about their love of the band. So that I guess that makes plenty of sense. But yeah, no, I thought it was pretty interesting to hear something so pretty fully formed. I think the word I've been seeing thrown around a lot is confident, a confident debut from a new band.
Yeah, I think confident is a good word for it. It fully forms another good way to describe it. I think what really stood out to me with their sound was there was a lot of similarity, from song to song. Some of the drum beats and tempos are very similar, and I think definitely there's variations of the guitar sound, but there's, like you said, I think a very distinctive homage to that '90s like washed out punk indie rock, which was obviously so popular. Smashing Pumpkins was a band that kind of came to mind
Mm.
at times listening to them, but uh, the ability to still make songs that really stood out and felt different, even with the same kind of like DNA running through them, from song to song, I thought was a really good sign for them, because I think as they obviously progress as a band and become a little bit more experimental in their next couple of albums, if we get those, which I'm hoping we do, it's going to be really cool to see them kind of keep the ability to like have a central sound, but just kind of flourish out. So it
Yeah.
almost feels like you're watching like something bloom, right? And the bloom is just starting, and it's still kind of like compact, and we're just excited to see where they go. And I think the album really starts off right from the rip with some great
Mm.
songs. I think those first three, Anti Glory, Beautiful Song, and Live and Ski, were probably three of the highlights for me on this. And then there's a couple down in the second half that I really liked as well. But I think Anti Glory just those drums catch you right away, right?
Yeah.
They're just kind of whirring around you. The guitar comes in, and it feels very like, you have the like kind of lackadaisical vocals all throughout this that kind of fall into the music in some way, but it just feels very cool in a sense. And then you get to Beautiful Song, and that has like that more washed out feel, but by the end, the way it kind of crescendos with like just like the cymbals just ripping through it, and then her vocals kind of push up a little bit above it. I think it's just a really really well crafted song, and it really impressive first start to the album.
Yeah, I like the Anti Glory a lot as well. I thought a Dirtbag Transformation,
Mhm.
Still Dirty, was pretty cool because the guitar line on that's like much more like pop rock, almost
Yeah.
just a different vibe from what you'd heard to that point. I thought that one was pretty cool. And like normally like this is not like my cup of tea, this kind of more lackadaisical vocals, more
Mhm.
penchant to like washed out production, but I think just the way it's all kind of packaged together, I still enjoyed it. I also really liked at the end there Billy, which is a single from several months
Yeah.
ago. That one, I mean, the drums are really evident on that one, and then it's just kind of like a jam. Honestly, that song that was really nice.
Yeah, I really like those last two songs. Homage to Birdnoculars, which they have some really funny names on here. They have a song called "The Fall of Horsegirl," which is just an instrumental, but I just thought that was really funny. And then "The Guitar Is Dead 3," which I thought was also pretty funny, especially
Mm.
because it's all piano, and then the next two songs have like this pretty distinctive guitar line in it. But yeah, I agree. What I really liked about those last two, what stood out to me, was the way that they use the vocalist, that voice that kind of falls into the music in a sense, with some talking parts underneath it, just to kind of like it kind of like almost like raises the vocals above each other, but also like together in a sense, and it gives that like sly cool feeling that I think they're going for on this. And um they have a music video for I believe it's burden no, sorry, dirtbag transformation, where it's just like it looks like they just shot it themselves, right? It's like them in like this like dressed up, like they're playing dress up at their mom's house almost, and then like doing like a talent show, and it just kind of is like this handheld going back and forth very shaky thing, and it looks really like indie and cool. And so I really appreciate that like throwback feel that they have to a lot of this. It really
Mhm.
was like welcoming, like you said, to hear something like this.
Yeah, and one last note too. I was not aware of this at all, but evidently, Horse Girl is the most high profile of a burgeoning uh, indie rock scene, specifically in Chicago, where Horse Girl is from, and just kind of reminds me of the post punk scene over in England that we've talked about a lot recently with Black Midi and Squid and Black Country New Road. Just cool to see these kind of like hot spots of subgenres popping up in rock music. We're so used to this in hip hop, but to actually see it in rock these days is really cool too.
Great point. We'll be adding a song or two by them to our Nostalgia Best of 2022. So check that out. Let's move on to television, though, Dave, where I know you were clamoring for it. I know that you couldn't wait to be in the live action world of Miss Marvel, one of your favorite superheroes, and Disney Plus finally dropped the first episode this past Wednesday. Uh, what did you think of this first episode, Dave? Miss Marvel, not a character I think really, all joking aside, either you or I has really engaged with much, if I'm right.
No, yeah, not too much. I mean, the thing is, Miss Marvel is a very new character, less than 10 years old in the comics. So the popularity of the character, I think, kind of speaks for itself because it's risen to such a high profile so quickly. The lead character in the uh, Square Enix Avengers game from 2020, kind of reminiscent of like Harley Quinn on DC, where like a new character just becomes such a big, basically new A-lister for them. That's what they want Miss Marvel to be on the screen. And getting what is this, the sixth Marvel MCU Disney Plus series? It's like, okay, we've seen a bunch of these. We've talked about the ups and the downs. There's certainly been both. Got a new one. I think for me, the trailer, I was like, is this a show for kids?
Hmm.
You know what? Maybe not. I'm gonna be honest. I think the first episode of the six-episode series, I think the first episode kind of surprised me in terms of the strength of its tone, the strength of its casting, and its visuals, which is very uncommon for Marvel, honestly, and left me feeling pretty good. I think honestly, the one question mark is when the show has to be a Marvel show in the future. How will that go? Because all the non-Marvel-y stuff I actually thought was pretty strong, definitely exceeded my expectations.
Yeah, I think that's the part that really stood out to me. And I have to say, I don't think I really loved this. YA stuff, not really my bag. So I don't know if like this is a show I'm going to really be as into as some of the other shows. But the things I really liked were the exploration of her identity
Mm,
and of her family's culture and
yep.
what it means to be a Pakistani American living in Jersey City. I thought all of that stuff was really great. I thought the stuff with her family and like their relationships more so. Her relationship with her dad, her relationship with her brother, with her mom, the dynamics at play, cultural dynamics, gender dynamics, all of that were
Mhm.
really, really well done. I really loved that stuff. The stuff I think I found hard to sit with, and or maybe not hard to sit with, or I just didn't really enjoy. I guess I'll say, and maybe this is a symptom of watching the boys simultaneously while watching this. Is when they go to like the Avengers convention,
Yeah.
Marvel convention, whatever it is. That was when I was like, you know what, I might just be like over Marvel right now. It's so like it's so tuned in a certain way that just feels worn down to me and think like a little boring, especially when you're watching something like The Boys that is so critical and feels so like thought provoking, and Marvel feels like I'm just supposed to like giggle along and be like, "Oh, there's Captain America's butt cheeks again." Like, like I don't know.
Right. Well, I think that's a good point because I've been saying this for a while now. The world of the MCU itself is not cool, and it hasn't
Mhm,
ever been. Like just like the general world. It's not like a world you want to be in because like there's nothing to it.
mhm,
So like when you see all these civilians all hyped about the Avengers that they love, their real life heroes as they would be in universe, it's like you know what, like I don't really care. And I never have.
mhm.
It's I think it's a major weakness of the MCU where it's like, here we are again in fake New York City, shot in Atlanta like usual, and it's like there's just like nothing there. Like the world of her culture in her little neighborhood in Jersey City, that felt much more alive and real.
Yeah.
And everything else is just like, can we just get back to the other stuff? Because
Mhm,
that would be honestly a very compelling coming of age story. And there's been a lot of comparisons critically to like Bennett, like Beckham, very similar
mm,
themes there, and I think we definitely have a lot of talent at the head here because you have Adil and Bilal directing this pilot, directing the finale. Those are the guys that directed Bad Boys for Life. They directed the upcoming DC Batgirl movie. You have them. You have Bishop K. Ali as the showrunner. A lot of clear intentionality and thoughtfulness about Kamala's home life and how she thinks about things in the world. But like how she thinks about things in the world doesn't actually have anything to do with the MCU world. So how it goes with Kamala like getting her Miss Marvel powers, which were slightly tweaked from what she has in the comics. I don't know, like because at the end of the day, this is probably just a series that sets Miss Marvel up to show up in the Marvels, Captain Marvel 2, in the movie. So we know it probably won't be that consequential. It's just kind of a coming of age origin story,
mhm.
and I just think Marvel kind of needs to show the work again and like make you care about its greater world building because I just don't think they're very successful at it, at least on the TV front right now.
The people involved with this, and I have to give them a lot of credit. They have gotten a lot of people who can relate to the background and have lived the background. The fourth episode is uh, directed by Charmine Obaid Chinoy, who has won Academy Awards and Emmy Awards, and specifically for her work in highlighting the inequalities with women and within the Pakistani Canadian culture. So I
Mm.
assume that she's probably going to be exploring some of the family dynamics there and cultural dynamics as well. You mentioned Adil and Bilal. I think even Bisha K. Ali is someone who definitely is on the rise, and I think this is a great opportunity for her. I think I think there's a lot of talent here. I think, like you said, it's hard to it's hard to totally and fully explore and examine these ideas when they're still kind of held to these boundaries or these expectations of a specific Marvel vision. And um, I think we've gotten some attempts to try to break that mold, and those are the shows that typically work or that we've liked more. Loki, first 7 to 8 episodes of WandaVision. If this show can maybe stay grounded. Obviously there's going to be some exploration of Kamala Khan's past and these, the powers that she gets from wearing the bracelets or I think they were bracelets, right? Or some sort of
Yeah,
something
some
that goes
kind of
on her
bracelet
wrist.
from her grandmother or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's obviously going to be that aspect, but if it can still stay about her relationship with her family and what it means to be Pakistani American, I think there's a lot of potential for this show to rise above something like Hawkeye
Right.
or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But if it really has to swerve more into that Marvel lane, I think we're going to kind of be lumping it in as another entry that just fell short. Didn't reach
Right.
potential.
Yeah. To Marvel's credit, I will say I thought Aman Vellani was really great as Kamal
Mhm.
Khan. It's immediately charismatic and winning, and they definitely did a great job there. So, um, at least she'll probably end up being a future anchor for the MCU, as it feels like
Oh yeah.
all these shows seems to be setting up, of course, with like Kate Bishop and Hawkeye similarly. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's only so much to say about a lot of these Marvel shows lately. Moon Knight, the best thing about Moon Knight was that it was unconnected. It just ultimately didn't really have the story needed to take full advantage. So Miss Marvel, maybe it's only so connected. We'll see. Then again, maybe we'll see Brie Larson at the end of the series, and it's super connected. Who knows?
Yeah. I do want to shout out a couple of scenes that I think really stood out to me. I guess one in particular, but most of the stuff within their house I thought was really, really great. Whether it's them having dinner together, her talking to her parents and asking to go to Avenger Con. But I really loved the scene where her parents allow her, tell her you can go, but your father has to come with you, and he bursts in as the Hulk on Kapoor is just he's so funny in that moment, bursting in all painted up in green, and then I think shows some really good chops because it's heartbreaking when she's like, "No, I don't, I don't want to go as Hulk. I don't want to go as this like with you guys." Like, it
Mhm.
really made me feel sad. So I thought that was really, really effective. I also liked a lot of the scenes in the school between Kamala and Bruno.
Mhm.
When they're kind of like plotting and stuff. I think that's pretty fun. And like you said, running around Jersey City, there's some fun stuff there as well. Like when they run to the bus and she has to leave her bike behind and stuff. I thought that was like fun to see them traveling about, but a lot of the other stuff just didn't fully hit for me. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah.
The show could go in two directions. It feels like.
For sure. I think visually, first episode did a really cool job of putting like the animations, like her drawings, like in the world, like on the backgrounds and stuff. So I'm curious to
Yeah.
see if that kind of visual flair that's pretty unique per Marvel standards. I want to see if that continues in the subsequent episodes. We'll see. But yeah, uh, Marvel's back because it really never goes anywhere.
Let's move forward to a show that's going somewhere, and that specific place is space, and that's For All Mankind, season 3, dropping this past week on Apple Plus. Dave, we haven't talked about For All Mankind before. I caught up on it last year, or early into this year, I should say, like January-ish. And I know that you caught up just recently
Mm.
for the season 3 premiere. And I just kind of wanted to ask, what was your initial thoughts going into it, and what was your overall experience in catching up for the season 3 premiere?
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of this show, of course, one of the launch series for Apple TV Plus towards the end of 2019, and I heard there was a bit of praise, but faint praise perhaps for that first season, at least when it came out, due to its length and kind of slow getting out of the gate. But still a lot to like about it as a historical or alternate history series about the escalation of the space race. It's very appealing on its face. So I had still kind of like been keeping my eye on the show, and then when For All Mankind season 2 came out last year, the hype was immediately increased due to people saying the show was just better. Then when the finale to season 2 came out, there was this hosannas being sung about how epic it was, and I think that's all true. It's all pretty spot on. The show really, I think it's still appealing and it immediately grabbed me in season 1, but then clearly took a step up with season 2, and then the finale was really gripping, and like I knew it was to expect a lot going in, but I wasn't expecting it to truly be like Red Dawn meets Apollo 13, which is basically what it is in the
Yeah.
second half. It's pretty awesome, and I like a lot of the cast. I like how big in scope the show is, advancing in time tremendously. It's really fun to see the alternate history, butterfly effect
Mhm.
of things that happen in this world that didn't happen that way in real life, things that did still happen the same way. Really cool. And it's really fun if you know a lot about the history of NASA and the space and stuff like that. And I'm actually just really happy that we have a space series that's really hit in this manner. And I would not be surprised if Apple really pushes for Emmys this time around with season 3, because there's been a lot of space shows recently that didn't really last. You know, you think of The First with Sean Penn and Away on Netflix, and the Right Stuff series they did on Disney Plus. None of those really got too much love. And The Expanse, which Amazon saved from Sci-Fi, I guess is probably the best comp to this show, but that's always kind of been like a sleeper cult hit as far as these go. But for All Mankind, it's like it's kind of a lot of things at once. It's like the workplace drama, a science fiction show, has these big set pieces, amazing effects like for TV. It really is the whole package. So I'm really happy I got on board, and I'm really looking forward to watching the rest of season 3, because we've really got it going. You know, we went from getting on the moon to women in space to the moon base to now we're going to fucking Mars, bro, in the 90s. Let's go.
Yeah, the end of season 2, that finale, you get to the end of it, it cuts to the credits, and it shows them like on the moon in like 91 with Nirvana playing and like looking towards Mars, and it's just like, oh, let's fucking go. I was so pumped for this season 3. I really loved both seasons, honestly, but I agree. I think the second half of season 2 is just like absolute dynamite. And the the overall concept alone is just really brilliant. You know, like what if Russia beat us to space, and how that would totally like alter all these different perspectives and government policies and visions.
Hmm.
It's really like just brilliant. And I think the cast has all been really really strong. Obviously, I don't think every storyline grabs me, and I think there's some things I want to see more of, and some that I'm like, oh, we can. I've had enough of that. That's fine. But yeah, going into season 3 after that finale, in such a time jump, I was like, huh. I'm wondering what it is that made them want to jump forward this much. And obviously, I think it's the development of some sort of sustainable way to like make it to Mars and go there, because I think they're trying to be realistic about like how quickly technology would be able to develop and move.
Yeah.
But I think also putting some of these main characters into older stages of their life to then allow space for younger characters to like
Yes.
move in, because I think they're probably thinking we're not going to have Joel Kinnaman for 7 seasons of this. We're not going to have
Right.
yeah, he's going to move on and do some other stuff, so
Well,
we got to kind of build it forward. Go ahead.
that's exactly right. The thing about Joel Kinnaman's character, Ed Baldwin, is they make a point. Ed Baldwin, he was a Korean War veteran. Well, the Korean War was in the 50s, the last time I checked. They
Yeah.
didn't tell us it happened in any other different time. So
Hmm.
Ed is like in his 60s now. Does Joel
Hmm.
Kinnaman look that? Of course not. I can get by that, no big deal. But
Yeah.
like Ed Baldwin's like getting up there to be a astronaut still, you know. So it presents though great opportunity, as you said, for Kelly and Aleda and Gordo's son, like to have
Yeah.
them kind of take the next step as the younger characters, because the show does a really good job of paying things off and building like things up, and that was so great about really honestly both season finales, both end of both seasons, is they tie threads together really well, and things come together, and it's satisfying. And now we're to the point where the show in its story has progressed 25 years from the start of season 1. So now it makes plausible sense that these newer characters are in a position to take the lead of the series down the line, but it also makes logical sense in real life, you know, because like, again, like Joel Kinnaman probably is kind of playing out the string at this point on For All Mankind, as much as I love to see him. So I think the potential of the series moving forward is also very tantalizing. And uh, I think you just have really competent people at the helm, too. Obviously, Apple will spare no expense when it comes to making the show look great, but also you have Ronald Moore as one of the creators and the guy running the show here. Of course, a veteran from Star Trek, and also the basically the head of the Battlestar Galactica remake and Outlander. Like, he's a very successful TV creator. So, I mean, the future of the show, who knows how science fiction they truly get? You know, in a sense, it is
Yeah.
science fiction that we're going to Mars in the early to mid 90s. I think I was actually reading into it. I mean, if we were to go to Mars right now, it would still take us like nearly 2 years, let
Yeah.
alone having the technology to actually like be there, physically there and everything. So just really can't wait to see what's next because there's a lot of other interesting ideas being thrown out there with season three. You have Edie Gaethje's character coming up as a Dev Iessa, the head of this private space company, Helios. Very obvious parallel to Elon Musk with SpaceX and Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin, and just the
Mhm.
privatization of space, something seeing right now in the collaboration between private space companies and NASA and the government. Realistic thing. Now we're going to see it dramatized on this show too. Again, sounds great.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see where they go with that. I think from the first episode, I think they did a lot of ground laying while still having
Hmm.
a really, really captivating premiere. Obviously, I think the setup of Karen has this space hotel, the first of its
Yeah.
kind, is throwing this wedding or allowing Danny to throw his wedding there, and something goes wrong and they're not these astronauts who have been so decorated and become so famous and are lauded as American heroes aren't able to stop it. It's up to Danny as the younger person who's kind of like the up and comer within NASA to save the day. And I thought that was really interesting, and some of the obviously the dynamics between Danny and Karen,
Ugh.
which was a storyline that I was like, okay, we can move on from this in season two, but like, it is what
Apparently,
it is at
it's
this
not going
point.
to go away from what
Yeah,
advanced reviews have told us, which I feel like is a major mistake because that was by far the worst subplot of season two.
100% agree. But yeah, seems like it's gonna kind of be there. But I thought some of that stuff was like kind of interesting. I really really liked seeing Margot and
Mm.
the stuff with her, and specifically with the Russian guy. I think it was Sergey. Probably I'm
Right.
gonna guess his name was Sergey. I can't remember, but
Yeah.
just like how they're
Soviets trying to
kind of
work her, man. It's like the Americans.
yeah, exactly. And then also, we didn't get to see much of this, but Ellen, running for
Oh
president
god, yeah.
in '96 against Bill Clinton is very, very interesting to me, and I'm interested to see how they kind of pull this all together. I don't know how much we're actually going to see of her like interacting with Bill Clinton. Most of the time the interactions with presidents on this have just been over the phone. They'll
Right.
show a video of the president, so I don't know what that's going to look like, but definitely interesting. And I think that's the next level for this show, right? I think obviously keeping the um, actual like space interactions, and as they're kind of we're moving towards like actual war in space. I think there's going to be a lot of action in that sense, but these older characters who do choose to stay on, I don't think we'll probably get Kinnaman past this season. I'd be surprised, but I think a couple of them have a shot to remain. Obviously, Ren Schmidt as Margot, Sonia Walger as Molly, although maybe her health effects won't allow her to. I don't know.
Mhm.
I think there's some potential to see them kind of move into these more like political spheres, and
Mm.
like you said, it has all these different kind of thing like shows going on all at once. I think moving into a more political type drama could be an interesting direction for the show to go as well.
Yeah, totally. Because I think it does a great job early on in the past seasons of being a really good like workplace show, administrative show. I mean, in the beginning, it's very similar to like the right stuff kind of stuff, early or early space race days, post Mercury and Gemini and stuff. And I think the way they've handled the Ellen character has been really awesome. And seeing her move into politics as a Republican, and like how that's going to go is very appealing. Apparently, we're going to see some kind of parallel to Monica Lewinsky. I'm not sure if it's exactly that or it's on her side of things. I don't really know, but I think Jodie Balfour is really awesome as Ellen, and I think she's going to really blow up because she's also going to be in Ted Lasso season 3 later this year. So I think
Yeah,
she's clearly just going to explode because she's really captivating on For All Mankind.
totally. Totally. Yeah, I mean, was there anything else from this first episode that like stood out to you that you really liked or that you're interested in for this season?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think just nothing feels out of sync like it's brand new for this show. Like, yes, we're going to see like private space tourism and private space companies, but like that all still thematically makes sense in what's come before with For All Mankind. So I'm curious to see exactly like how much of a bigger role we see for people like Kelly and Aleda and stuff, because you still have Danielle Poole, you still have Ed Baldwin, you still have Karen, and I think the Karen character's kind of been tough throughout the series because she was the one with the least agency as just the wife of the astronaut. And I think they've tried to do their best. And I think that putting her right now in a spot where she's kind of at the head of private space work in some fashion, definitely a more interesting place for her character. But I really don't want to see the subplots with Danny again, just because the show didn't seem to want to integrate that like thematically at like a Oedipus level, which it didn't actually seem to tackle what kind of relationship that really was. So therefore, I'd rather just not see it at all.
Yeah.
Uh, but then again, this show crams in a lot of different subplots with a lot of different characters, and even if not everything hits, I think that's still okay because this is still a show that really likes to build up to something, taking from all its disparate parts. So not everything works. I think it doesn't really hurt the show because it's an ongoing series.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of different things to be looking forward to. I think one in particular, like one storyline I'm interested to see develop is what goes on with Danny's brother. He kind of has that like unhinged, pretty
Yeah,
critical look at NASA from a perspective
conspiracy
of
theorists.
some. Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's potential for him to uh, really like propel himself into a more central role in this season and provide a perspective that we don't get a ton of. I think a lot of the perspective that we're given of how the general public sees this is like this is an essential part of culture and of life within, um, this fictionalized reality. And I think having someone who's like, actually, this kind of fucking sucks and I hate it. It's like would be an interesting way because I
Yeah,
can't imagine every single person feels like space is the direction that uh, these two countries should be going. So
yeah.
definitely
I
be
mean,
interesting.
on the other hand, this is a world that already invented nuclear fusion to a degree that climate change is going down. It's like, you know what? Doesn't sound too bad over there, even if the Soviet
No, it
Union's
doesn't.
still going strong. Well, then again, it's not all
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. I know that was the part of the alternate reality, like news dump at the beginning that I was like most jealous of. I was like, God damn! Like imagine.
Imagine.
Anyways, we'll be talking about For All of Mankind as it comes. Obviously, I think a show that we both really love and are looking forward to talking more about. Let's move on to Barry, another show that we both love and look forward to talking about. And Barry season 3 just wrapped up. And man, I think like where I want to start with this is there any show that even comes close to doing what Barry does? It feels like it's just such in its own lane right
Hmm.
now, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it's definitely shed the dark comedy label. I mean, this was such a bleak season, such a dark,
Yeah.
uh, tough hang season. You know,
Mhm.
but at the same time, it still felt like the third season of Barry because I think those first two seasons did a really good job of just sucking you into these characters' orbits in a unique way. And even if I don't know if I enjoyed my time in the world as much this time around because it was so much darker, but it's still you still can't help but be impressed by like the level of storytelling.
Yeah, this season, like you said, it really shifted from, I think, being a comedy in general. I mean, there's still some moments that are funny, but it's really just a exploration, like a character exploration at this point. And I think the thing I was most impressed by was not only how this show, I think, looks and feels singular, like the way that they choose to shoot and basically just lets you be in these action scenes. I think the scene from episode 6 on the dirt bike is one that comes to mind, but also like Sally in the last episode, beating the guy to death. Yeah, even just like in the final scene, Barry kind of walking through the house, like you're just kind of like in these moments. There's not music kind of guiding how you're supposed to feel. There's not other cues that are really like there to trick you or bring up an emotional response. You're just kind of in these moments with the characters as they're experiencing them, which feels very singular. But just like the way that they choose to shoot them, that dirt bike scene, you're watching Barry drive past all these cars, just hearing like the radio kind of go by, and you're just moving with him through it. And it just feels like I hadn't seen a scene shot specifically in that way or with that intention, or even like Barry on the beach, like in that like afterlife, like
Yeah.
almost like dying type world. Like no, shows don't really. It doesn't feel like shows kind of go to that place in the same way. Like there's something elevated about it, and so I just was really impressed with that. Um, it definitely was a tougher hang this season. Like you said, super dark. The emotions are incredibly raw, and I think it makes sense for a show that is really, I think, trying to explore what these characters would actually be going through or feeling, and what they're really like if they were in these situations. But it definitely made it a little bit less fun. And I think that it's hard to kind of grapple, like, if a show is not as much fun to be with, does that mean it's not as good of a show, or does it just mean that maybe the
Mm.
aim of the creators has changed a bit?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. They Bill Hader, to his credit, just really taking control of the creative juices of this show even more. Directing most of the season. He's going to direct all of season 4 for HBO. When that comes, he said they're still in the script phase of season 4 because they've actually changed what it's going to be. I remember at one point they had said that season 4 had been written during the pandemic because this show was COVID delayed with the production. Well, it
Hmm.
seems they kind of switched up what they want to do, which I think speaks to the interest kind of evolving through the course of season 3, which is definitely cool for a show because I think the show can get away with it because you have these core characters that are, of course, excellent portrayals, but also just fleshed out in, I think, a meaningful but also kind of unsurprising way when like major things happen to them. And season 3, like you said, kind of getting a little more existential with this kind of afterlife beach land where Barry can see his past victims and stuff. It's definitely thought provoking. Um, I also I enjoyed the stuff with Banshee, the streaming service, and the obvious but still poignant comments about being a slave to the algorithm in terms of content decisions and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the strongest NoHo Hank season. Hank kind of goes on a pretty simple, straightforward journey this time around because it's darker. You don't get as much of Anthony Carrigan's humor, which was often the lightest part of the series. So that was clearly a choice. So kind of curious to see like how they keep Hank on the show in season 4 because his connection to Barry and everyone else is pretty tangential at best. Obviously, after what's happened with all the Bolivian characters and then the Chechens and everything, so TBD there. But yeah, I mean, you obviously know that this Barry. I don't think Barry is going to spend all of season 4 in jail, right? And he's going to see
No.
Sally again, even though she left. You know, so I don't even know how to like theorize about the future of the show though, because like there's kind of no point. because like there's no way you can get it right.
Yeah, it's hard. I agree. I think it's hard to think about what the show is going to become because it leaves off at a point where it's like, well, I don't know how Barry could not be in jail, all next season, and it's pretty clear he was about to at least attempt murder, if it seems like they can prove a few others. Um, but there's another this show has kind of reached like master of none
Mm,
territory for me in a sense where it's like the show could literally be anything. I honestly thought especially like episode 6 and 7, Barry has the chase on the dirt bikes, and it
yeah.
feels like those are the only four people in the world, right? Like it feels like those dirt bike people chasing him and Barry and the guy shooting at them from the car, the only four people in the actual world, because you don't see any people get out of their car, you don't see any people get hit by bullets, even though this guy is just shooting like an AR-15 into this line of cars, and it felt almost like surreal to me. And then you actually have episode 7, where, like you said, he's having this existential, almost about to die experience where he sees all his victims, and it feels like they could very much kind of just go into this like dream world. I mean, even some of the stuff with Fuchs this season, where
Right.
he meets like the love of his life and chooses to go back towards this awful existence that he has, where and giving up this potential life of happiness feels almost like I was questioning if anything we were seeing was actually real or just
Mm,
like a dreamscape for some of these characters, which I don't expect them to do. I think that would be really, really hard to swallow if basically they're like, yeah, all of season 3 was just like them all daydreaming or something like that. Sally got all this, was just dreaming about what would happen if she got all this fame and lost it, and Natalie then stole it from her or something like
right.
that. But I definitely feel like they could take the show in a lot of different directions, and it's kind of nice to be in this space because it's nice to be surprised by television at times. So I wanted to ask you, because we had a few different storylines, like you mentioned. The NoHo Hank, I think, storyline was not my favorite of the season, although I think there were definitely some really strong moments. I think specifically the end of the season when he saves Cristobal, but can tell that he's just like not the same person anymore. I think the scene where Cristobal's wife comes and extracts him, and NoHo Hank's hiding in the closet. I think that's a really like devastating scene to watch, but I think really, really well acted. But we also get Fuchs, who's kind of sidelined for a while, and then kind of comes back into the fold. You obviously have the
Raven.
stuff with yes, that that's great. Stephen Root is so good and like eating that up. It's just really fantastic. Obviously, you get Henry Winkler as Kusino, and developing the show and kind of coming to grips with who he was as a person in the past.
Hmm.
And I mean, Sarah Goldberg, I think, with Sally and the stuff with her and DRC Corden and
Right.
stuff.
Her
There's
self
a lot of really
sabotage
good
scene
stuff.
is like crazy in the elevator. Like
Yeah.
that was a
Oh
wild
my
scene.
god. I felt like that whole arc, like Sally's arc this season, was probably my favorite. Not only seeing her like actually like developing the show, and kind of how like this like new fame was really exacerbating some of the more awful aspects of her personality and her person, but like the way that they shot her, like as she was show running, like moving through, talking to people, directing, moving from one set to the next. I thought that was beautiful. Really, like you said, loved the commentary on like the algorithm and like how quickly like a successful show like that has potential can just kind of be washed away if the algorithm doesn't think it's a good idea. To then her downfall, which is just like man, Sarah Goldberg had probably two of the most like full emotional outbursts of the season and just crushed them both, the elevator scene and in the final episode with Hader. But out of these like storylines kind of going around Barry, which ones were the ones you found yourself enjoying the most?
Honestly, I like some of the stuff in the beginning where like Sally slowly comes to grips with the fact that her relationship with Barry is very toxic. And like,
Mm,
shout out Elsie Fisher in a supporting role, kind of her character kind of showing
yeah,
Sally like, yo, that's not good that that's what's going on between the two of you, right?
yeah,
And then you have that scene where Barry basically comes up, just kind of offers up this his ability to completely ruin this person's life and manipulate their psyche by fucking with them in their home and sneaking in their house and killing their dog and doing all this shit to them. And it completely disturbs her. And like that's the end. And then when
Mhm.
Sally's at her absolute lowest, having lost everything professionally, she like wants him to go back to that. It's like this amazing like circle moment. But then at the end, she still leaves. She has to be giving up. I think that's what we're supposed to need. She's like leaving Hollywood, right? She's like going home, kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's really well done. Man, I love Hader's delivery when he's like, "No, no, no, it's okay. You know what? We're just gonna do like some like slight psychological like terrorism on her. Like, well, I'm just gonna go in. I'm gonna like replace her dog with like a slightly different dog. I'm just gonna like move her furniture like 3 inches to the left, and like until she thinks she's going insane. You know, like and so he like says it so casually, nonchalant. His delivery is so perfect. I thought that was really great. I definitely liked the stuff going on with Robert Wisdom's character as yeah, Kusano's ex girlfriend's dad,
Oh
or
yes,
deceased girlfriend's dad. I thought
right.
that stuff was really, really interesting. And his name is Jim. So Jim Moss. I thought that
Boss,
character was
yes.
just so awesome and intimidating. And shout out to Robert Wisdom as one of my favorite second half of the Wire characters, and Bunny. I think he's fantastic. And that scene between him and Winkler in the final episode where he's just like screaming like, "Did you love my daughter? Did Barry love my?"
Mhm.
Like that was just like that really, really, really moving, and I think Winkler crushes that scene as well. So I really like that stuff. The stuff with Winkler, I mean, and Kusino, did you like where that went and him kind of like grappling with his past in that sense?
Yeah, well, early on, I wasn't really sure what we could where we could possibly go because it comes to the point where you have this ensemble and then, like the story beats just don't make sense together anymore. But then they did a really good job of how first Barry and then Jean want to like forgive the other over what's happened,
Mhm.
and that kind of like push pull between the relationship I thought was pretty interesting. And yeah, I thought that was a cool direction to have like Gene actually like reclaim his former glory as best he could in his current state. And like you meanwhile you have his the guy who plays his agent is just so funny, like suggesting adjectives and like and trying to like come up with compliments like no perfect. So yeah, I thought the Gene stuff was pretty good. And then the way it happens at the end where he completely dupes Barry into getting
Yeah.
himself arrested. Like perfect.
Yeah, I thought that was a really perfect ending for Gina for this season. Yeah, and Fred Melamed as his agent is just fantastic. I also liked the stuff with Laura San Giacomo as Annie, and like how uh, Kusino basically like is trying to like make it up to her and prove he's not a bad person. Be like, I don't remember ruining your career. Like, I'm going to give you all these opportunities now to direct my new show, and like we're gonna do your play on this other show that I'm developing.
Mhm.
And her reaction when she's like directing for the first time in like 30 years, she's like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. Like I just thought that was hilarious and so realistic. Like it really just made me laugh. Yeah, I mean, anything else from the season that you really wanted to touch on or that stood out to you?
No, I don't think so. You know, like I said, like honestly, like I think it's my least favorite of the three seasons.
Hmm.
Just because I think I enjoyed watching it less. Doesn't make it
Yeah.
any less good though.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the takeaway. Is this is the least fun season of Barry, but I think it might be the strongest from like a story and like actual production standpoint. So, Barry is a show that I think everybody has to be watching. Please catch up on it. But let's move forward and to finish up this podcast with dinosaurs, Jurassic World Dominion. Dave, I didn't watch the last Jurassic World movie, so catching up on this, I was in for some surprises, man. And not in the best way. This is a movie that is getting panned critically. I think it's sitting at like 30% Rotten Tomatoes, but it made quite a bit of money this weekend. A lot
That's
of
right.
people came out to see it, and so I think the Jurassic franchise still going strong. But man, where did this movie go wrong?
Well, I think you just have to kind of grapple with what the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise is. As you said, making a lot of money. It's the second highest grossing Universal Pictures franchise behind Fast and Furious, and it's made less movies than that franchise has. You know, Jurassic Park, obviously, Stone Cold classic, Steven Spielberg, Michael Crichton adaptation. Reputation speaks for itself as an amazing popcorn movie, a paragon of practical effects meets CGI for its time. Still amazing use of animatronics. Like, people know about Jurassic Park, right? I think it's a movie really kids get shown eventually. Like, it's really kept on in the consciousness, right? But after that, The Lost World, definitely not what people expected. Also Spielberg, also Crichton adaptation. And then from there, Jurassic Park 3, which I actually have fond memories of seeing Jurassic Park 3 in the theaters back in 2000, 2001, 2002, whenever that was. I was on vacation. I remember it pretty well, honestly, and I remember liking it at the time. But, Jurassic Park 3, The Lost World, as well as all these Jurassic World movies, none of them have been beloved by critics. They've just been broadly popular and financially successful. So I think it's just one of those things where kind of like, I don't know, kind of like the Transformers movies, like people go to these movies to see dinosaurs. So like the reviews kind of don't matter to the target audience for these films. Now, I think watching Jurassic World Dominion without having some prior knowledge of what happens in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, as you said, can present some challenges from understanding pieces of the plot. You have to know, or you'll quickly learn that the dinosaurs are out in the world in Start of Dominion, because that's what happens at the end of Fallen Kingdom. And there's a specific character that's introduced towards the end of Fallen Kingdom that figures pretty prominently in Dominion. It's a pretty serialized continuation of a story here. But on the other hand, Fallen Kingdom made like $1.3 billion, so I think they're kind of expecting that if you're going to watch Dominion, you probably watch the last one. So honestly, you're probably in a bit of a unique boat.
Yeah, I probably am. And I am probably not going to go back and watch Fallen Kingdom after watching this. I think that Dominion, I think Dominion asked some interesting questions, but gets bogged down in just like lazy script writing, honestly, and just like uh, shoehorned in nostalgia that just didn't
Hmm.
even feel like it really paid off all that much. Like, it's not like a bad thing to have Sam Neill there. I just don't really know why he was there. He's just kind of like along for the ride to be like, I'm old and I'm lonely and I want to be with Laura Dern. Okay. Like, okay, I guess we
Yeah,
really needed another movie. Like, even Chris Pratt in this movie. Like, I get he's like the action star. I mean, the guy just like he just holds up his hand at a dinosaur like 10 times in the movie, and that's kind of it. I guess he gets like one fight scene and he gets to run around, but like I don't really know what he's doing here. Like, I
right.
don't
Well,
really know what the movie's totally
like
trying
I
to get
said,
at.
they're the quote stars of the past movies and the current movies, respectively. They're not the stars of the Jurassic franchise. Again, the stars are watching the dinosaurs.
Right.
So it's kind of whatever. It's like Chris Pratt's Owen Grady. It's not his best character. It's not really Chris Pratt's fault. Just the character hasn't had a whole lot to really do, and he hasn't really been that fleshed out over the course of 3 films. It is what it is. So in that
And
sense, I think Pratt's good enough for what this character needs. I don't think he has uh, crackling chemistry with Bryce Dallas Howard, but again, it's not a
no,
relationship that they put any time into fostering. So like, you don't really have to care.
right. I guess like um, I just think about like why the first Jurassic Park really worked. And coming at a time when they had much less CGI, I think telling this story, but having the practical effects that they had, that first time you like see the landscape and you see all the dinosaurs, it's really like kind of just like
Mm,
breathtaking and very moving. And you have this John Williams score that is just like all like top notch, and you're like, this is incredible. And I don't even think the dinosaur scenes in this movie really like blew me away that much. Like, there's some cool, I think like dinosaurs that have you know mutated or evolved, and they have different powers, and that's kind of interesting to think about. But I just didn't even feel like like that was really as gripping as some of the stuff like in the first Jurassic World when they have that like T-Rex who could do all the different things. I
The
found that
Indominus
T-Rex to be,
Rex.
yeah, Indominus Rex. I found that to be a lot more interesting than some of the like mutated or evolved dinosaurs in this movie.
Yeah. So, and that's something they, I think, to like, and like Colin Trevorrow, of course, came back for Dominion of shepherding in
Mhm.
World, still being involved with Fallen Kingdom, but not directing it. His first film since he was fired from Star Wars Episode 9. And I think to Trevorrow's credit, he's at least attempted to like throw in some new ideas to this because you can't keep doing Jurassic movies if you don't stop making Jurassic Park 1 all over again. Because you just can't keep doing that. You have to find something new. So they think they've tried to like introduce, like these like hybrid, like built in a lab dinosaurs with DNA splicing and stuff like that. They've tried stuff like that. In this movie, we have this Biosyn company who are kind of like an amalgamation of like Facebook and Monsanto and all these other tech things. And I think there's some familiar tropes, but still kind of interesting ideas there in terms of like if you're gonna throw some new flavor into like the Jurassic stuff. I thought it was pretty solid. I think the issue though is like you said is like the movie Dominion is trying to be a lot of things at once. I mean, the first hour and hour plus is like so many different genres of movie all at once. It's like an Indiana Jones movie at the end. It's an action thriller when they're in Malta. I liked it the most once we finally got to Biosyn, once we finally got to Italy, and we're around like the dinosaurs in a more conventional format. That which is like their sanctuary where they live, like basically the new version of Jurassic Park here. I thought that was like the most interesting here, but the nostalgia stuff's interesting to me because bringing back Sam Neill and Laura Dern and bringing back Goldblum at like one scene in Fallen Kingdom, it's like I like seeing all of them. It's nice to see them. They're not given much of anything to do, although I thought Goldblum definitely made the most of his lines, just
Oh
being
yeah.
like classic, like hashtag Jeff Goldblum, like the complete. He's just being the meme at this point, but I really
Yeah.
liked it. I thought he's just super funny still. Uh, but did you realize? I did not realize this until after the fact that our bad guy here, Dodgson, the head of Biosyn. Did you realize that guy was in the first Jurassic Park? Because I didn't remember that. This is the guy who pays Wayne Knight the money to steal the embryos in Jurassic Park 1. Remember the scene with Wayne Knight? They're on the beach and he's like, "We got Dodgson! We got Dodgson!" This is memorable, like Wayne Knight being himself. It's like super funny. That's the
Oh, I
guy who
remember
is
it.
now our Steve Jobs in Dominion. I was like, no fucking way anyone remembers
Yeah.
that.
Well, I realized it after I read a review on this, and they pointed that out, and I was like, oh yeah, he did look kind of familiar, but like kind of just generic bad guy.
Dodgson!
I do love that he I do love that he named his company Biosyn, which is just like the most like on the nose like evil corporation name ever. Like fantastic stuff there. Gold, like I just want to go back to Goldblum real quick. Man, he's fucking chewing on all these scenes. I love when he gets fired by the head guy, and he's like, "Before I go, I need to give an apology to all of you who have been misled." Just like the way he like delivers it, it just feels like you don't know what he's gonna say next, and it's just like kind of unhinged, but also like very much like not. Goldblum is just so great. Um, yeah, I really like his performance in this. I, performances I don't know if I liked as much, like Laura Dern. I feel like she's not really given like a ton to work with other than like she's supposed to be the person kind of like propelling things full forward and like super competent, like kind of leading this through. And I think she does that, but like I don't know, like her character in the first one wasn't super memorable other than like kind of being this like motherly figure to these two children in this, and like I guess she kind of is like the grandmother to like Bryce Dallas Howard and forgetting the kid's name.
Clone
But
Kid, yeah, whatever her name is. Yeah.
yeah, so it's just like I guess she just kind of like replicates that role, but like kind of thankless. Like Laura Dern didn't need to come back for this. I don't know.
Right. Well, and
Uh,
that's kind of the thing. It's like the nostalgia play with Jurassic was when Jurassic World came out in 2015, and the movie absolutely crushed at the box office because it was a very familiar return to the franchise. just like the way Force Awakens was a very familiar return to the
Exactly.
franchise.
Mhm.
There's not strong nostalgia for Sam Neill and Goldblum and Laura Dern the way there was for like Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher. It's just not the same level of audience relationship to the character because again, audience relationship with Jurassic franchises to the dinosaurs and the spectacle first. So
Yep.
it's not quite as clean as like a thing. Although, thinking about this, it's kind of interesting to think about like Fallen Kingdom being like the Last Jedi of the Jurassic World movies, where like they actually tried to do something different. And I love the Last Jedi. I didn't love Fallen Kingdom. I actually like it less than Dominion because Fallen Kingdom just does this. It becomes like a haunted house movie at the second half, which is a cool thing to try and twist and make something new about Jurassic. It just actually wasn't that good. That was the issue. And now Dominion is kind of like your Rise of Skywalker, Mea culpa, end of the trilogy thing, where you try and please everyone and thus don't actually please anyone. It's kind of interesting to think about this parallel here. But on the other hand, like they've written themselves into such a corner with like these movies, and like I feel like Universal, why would they stop making these movies? These movies make so much fucking money. They're so successful, but from a plot perspective, the Jurassic Park, Jurassic World story is that book is closed. Like you have to completely reboot the shit out of this now.
Well, I'm not so sure. I feel like the introduction of Dewanda Wise and
Yeah,
Mamadou Athi feels like, kind of placing these characters who could take the helm and, do something a little bit different as like heads of the franchise moving forward. Obviously, with Isabella Sermon as Maisie, that was the character's name. The clone girl who seems like she's kind of being put at the center of this,
yeah.
but like yeah, it feels like it could also be the end of it, but I don't know. Like to reboot this again, really? I don't know. How
Maybe
many times can you do this?
because like it wasn't a true reboot in the sense it was a continuation, right? And like they ended
True.
it with the original characters here for that's worth, as we've said. But maybe now you're kind of set up to make like another Transformers comparison. Like make a Bumblebee, make a smaller scale, more character
Mm,
story with just a few dinosaurs. I wonder if that's a fit for this franchise. I don't know. Um, but I think generally, like unchecked science and corporate greed, familiar themes to this franchise and films in general, but like still appealing stuff. Like to see in blockbusters. Like I like generally like the these plots as dumb as they are. Like I still find them entertaining. I enjoyed Dominion despite it being super long and super dumb. Like that's kind of why I'm there. So
Did you like the dinosaurs as much in this one?
yeah, I think that's kind of an issue, right? I think part of it's the CG. Like you just don't have like a connection to dinosaurs as much this
Mhm.
time. The whole like blue and the raptor stuff has never been my favorite thing with Jurassic World, and like I just don't like some of the set pieces I've enjoyed, but I feel like they kind of like build up a lot of this stuff with like these big fights and like the T Rex being like the anti-hero, almost kind of saving the day by fucking up Indominus Rex or
Yeah.
Gigantosaurus or whatever it is each time. It's like I think it's just like when you kind of build up to these like dinosaur fights where it's these two non-sentient CGI things fighting each other and our human characters like watching on the side and trying not to die. It's just not as compelling as they hope it is, despite it
Yeah.
being visually impressive. Yeah, like I feel like you think about like this thing about this Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3, which is like not a beloved dinosaur per se, but like that just had like a real like terror to it. It's like
Mhm.
I don't know what it is, but I feel like because like the environments are so CG heavy, it just doesn't quite hit the same, even though it looks good. Like I thought like Jurassic World 1 probably did the best with these CG dinosaurs the most, but yeah,
Yeah.
something about Dominion is just like it's fine. I think maybe it'd be better if we didn't have such a heavy like locust theme in Dominion, which on
Yeah.
itself was like a twist. Like this evil company trying to ravage the world's food supplies to then increase their market share. It's like, huh, not a bad thought, but kind of doesn't feel like it fits in a Jurassic World movie. Uh, I don't know. Like, did you have a connection to these dinosaurs that much?
No, I think the one I had the most connection to was Blue, because you see him in the first movie, and there's like a real connection between him and Owen Grady in that first movie.
Hmm.
He might be in the second one. I didn't watch the one, like I said, but like
Yeah, it's the same one.
obviously something about a mother, or I guess a father. I don't know Blue's gender. Yeah,
Yeah,
asexually has a child that's taken from them. I think that's like
yeah.
compelling, and like that
Life
that
finds a way.
at the end, yeah, at the end when they return Blue's baby to them, and Blue turns around, gives like the little look, and the baby gives the little look. Oh man, that's just like good stuff. Like I feel connected to that. I think you said it right. The first Jurassic World, they did a really good job with these CGI dinosaurs. I think like that scene where and Andromedus Rex is chasing them in the little like glass spheres that they're
Hell
in, like
yeah,
roaming around.
it's a
That's like
great
a
scene.
really, yeah, really gripping, really terrifying scene. Super well like done. Action wise. There's the scene where like they're looking for the kids, and Owen Grady comes over the mountain and he sees all the dinosaurs that have been killed by Andromedus, and you're like, oh fuck, like this is really sad. Like it kind of reminds you when you see like the Triceratops dying in the first one. Like you
Yeah,
feel really like gutted. It just you don't connect to any of these scenes in the same way. Like you have that like underwater dinosaur, which I just was
yeah,
like,
the
okay, like I
mosasaur.
don't,
Yeah,
yeah, like what's going on here? You get some callbacks to some things. Like you get the raptor who has like the wings on the side of his
yeah,
face and
feathers,
kills the
accurate. They finally put
at the end.
feathers in the movies.
Yeah, finally, I was pretty happy with that. But
We've known
it's
dinosaurs had feathers since like 1995, like right after the first one
yeah.
came out, and they took this long to make it into the movies.
But it's just like hard, I think, to connect. And you think about also how dark this movie is. A lot of the action, especially near the end, takes place at night. And in the first movie, you kind of needed that, right? Because a lot of these practical effects, you kind of needed the darkness to like
Yeah,
create a sense of reality and to cover up some of the
yeah.
seams.
It's
You
heavy
don't need
filtering
that.
some of those scenes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you don't need that with CGI. So there's something lost, I think, when you're in the dark the whole time. And like you said, it pans over to them watching this one mutated dinosaur fight a T Rex, and then this like even more mutated dinosaur comes in, and they team up to kill it together. T Rex bites his neck and throws him, and they like claws him in the neck. It's just
yeah,
like there's nothing to that to me. I'm just like, okay, like cool. I don't know. It was kind of funny. I don't know. It really is going for something, and I just feel like they had seeds of things that really would be interesting to explore, and they just never really like hammered any of it home
right.
well. So
Like a lot's been made of like when Fallen Kingdom starts, like the dinosaurs are out in the wild and they're reproducing, and we just have to live with it. It's like they don't actually grapple with that idea, which would have been a very radical new idea for this franchise, having like dinosaurs out in the world. And at the end of the day, the stuff I liked the most is when we got most traditional in the second half, and we got to effectively the new version of Jurassic Park. But like
mhm.
in Malta, when we're kind of doing like an action movie and we see like this underground like black market marketplace bazaar for dinosaur sales and stuff, it's like, the seediness of this is interesting, it's appealing, right? And we get a Omar C's character from the first Jurassic World pops up, then it's like, it's like there's something there, but they just don't have the time to dedicate to this. I kind of wish we just didn't do this at all and went back to spend more time at Biosyn, at least commit. But it's kind of all these things at once. Like DeWanda Wise, I thought she was really great, but the problem is like she's basically in a completely different movie half the time because of what she has to do. So she's like such in the action mold. So it's just kind of a weird amalgamation in this movie, and like he has so much time spent with like Owen and what's her name, Claire. Owen and Claire's like relationship and taking care of the clone kid, and it's like, man, we're just kind of dragging our feet with this. Can we like speed things up? Can we like get to the dinos? It's like,
Yeah.
because like it's like seeing Blue out back, with Blue's kid doing nothing but just kind of being there. It's like I don't know, like I feel like it starts kind of slow, and then we have this complete interstitial in the middle. It's kind of a lot of things at once. It's a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, the ending, like you said, it tried to be Jurassic Park again, but it tried to be like an Indiana Jones movie in the middle, and family like through lines in there. It just it didn't really work for me. I was happy to see our guy Omar Sy, like I think you had mentioned before, like getting
Mhm.
a nice look with alongside Chris Pratt, which I think is exciting. I think there's some. I think there's some things that you can go in just kind of like enjoy, but overall, I don't know. I felt like the movie's kind of a mess, and
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah, I don't know. Probably not a movie we're going to be talking about much past today. But you think the franchise moves in total reboot mode, or like go smaller scale?
It's a great question. I mean, it's probably not advisable to go smaller because people show up to these movies because they're big.
All right.
But I mean, you just have to find a way to continue this franchise in a way that's not just keeping the park stuff. Because like the thing about Jurassic World, which was so cool, is like you got to see for a fleeting moment what it would have been like if Jurassic Park opened and was successful and super popular. And like that stuff's like super cool. I love that shit. And then things inevitably go wrong. Like it's a great formula. But I just don't think we can keep doing that formula all and over again. And they've made it pretty clear that Dominion is the end of like this serialized story. So you at least have to reboot it from a plot perspective, even if you kind of just pick things up. I don't know. I think Fallen Kingdom was an attempt to do something very different. I just don't didn't think they did it well enough. Does that mean you don't try something different ever again? I don't know. But I mean, these movies are way too successful. Universal should keep making these because these bankroll so many other things.
Yeah, yeah. I have no idea where they go from here. I'm interested what Pratt wants to do. And you said before you don't think this is Pratt's best role. I was wondering, what do you think is Chris Pratt's best role?
Hmm. I mean, it's got to be Guardians, right? Like
I
Star Lord, I
guess.
feel like is the
Yeah.
best use of his talents to this point. He never became Indiana Jones, long rumored back in the day. He was never Nathan Drake. You had Jurassic and Guardians really blowing up around the same time, and that's what kind of propelled him into the Chris Wars, into the A list, and he's had some other stuff here and there, some more one-off stuff. But I mean, apologies to the Lego Movie, but I feel like it's Guardians kind of easily, right?
Yeah, it's got to be. But Lego Movie's probably number two. Yeah, I think Lego Movie's got to be number two. That's actually a really good call. Chris Wars update. Give me your ranking.
I mean, it's Pine season, bro. It's been Pine season. Go check that out on youtube.com/nostalgia pod. Chris Pine, the best Chris. Chris Evans, not doing too bad in the post Captain America life. And
Not at
Hemsworth
all.
coming up this week in Spiderhead, and then Thor 4 too. So Chris Wars are hot.
Yeah, I actually think it might be Hemsworth right now. I mean, Thor coming up. I mean, Evans doesn't really have. Does he have a new show out? I
He
don't
has The
think so,
Gray
right?
Man coming out soon with Ryan
Oh, that's what
Gosling, the
it
huge
is. Yeah,
blockbuster
yeah,
for
yeah.
Netflix.
All right. Well,
And he,
you
and he
know
had
what?
Knives Out,
Actually,
of course.
June is gonna be spicing up the Chris Wars a little bit. I think it's Pratt is definitely last, like
Yeah,
no
he
doubt.
was last
I
when we
think
talked about it
can't.
last year.
He's actually barely hanging on at this point. So Chris Wars might be a three horse race from now on. But anyways, drop your thoughts on Jurassic World Dominion below. And Dave, what should the people be talking about for next week?
Yeah, so Pixar's going back to the movie theater. First time since Onward came out, right as the pandemic started. Lightyear. Chris Evans back in the new
There
thing,
you go.
the real Buzz Lightyear. So we'll see about that. Also on streaming with Chris Hemsworth, you have Spiderhead on Netflix with Miles Teller as well, directed by Joseph Kosinski, the director of Top Gun Maverick. Very exciting. Also a appealing indie movie out of Sundance, Cha Cha Real Smooth, which is be on Apple. That was a hit earlier this year. And on the music front, of course, Joey Badass, long awaited third album, finally here. Perfume Genius, back with a new record. Logic, back with a new record. Second post retirement album, this guy. Yeah, some good stuff there.
Logic is the most active retired artist of all time at this point. It's so stupid. Anyways, hit that subscribe at youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Follow us at nostalgiapod on Twitter. And give us a rating on whatever platform you listen to. It really helps. We appreciate you all. Catch you next week.